So in this video what we're going to do is we're going to cover combat rounds and how they work and how we play them. I've got a more experienced adventurer called Sir James. He's a warrior human and he's been through the first 5 training missions, and so he's ready to start rolling on the quest table for his quests. But and what we do is in a bit we'll roll for a random encounter and see what we get, and we'll go through the process of that actual combat. But before we do that, I just want to go through how combat works in basic terms. You roll for the monster's reaction. There's a chance that the monster will try and escape. There's a chance that it will just stand and fight normally, and there's a chance that it will become enraged and gain a bonus to its attack value. Depending on the monster's reaction, you would then decide if the monster's going to escape. You decide whether you want to block it or let it escape, and then if you decided to block it, that would affect what your decision would be in the forthcoming round. So you would be blocking the escape as opposed to making an attack or taking some form of other action. If you don't wish to, if the monster doesn't escape or you don't wish to block the escape, you can still try and hit the monster. And to do that, what you would do is you would, depending on the weapon that you're using, you would roll on a D100 die roll. You would roll equal to or less than strength if you was using a hand weapon, and dexterity if you was using a ranged weapon. Then if you managed to roll equal to or below those characteristics, the one that you was using, you would then roll for a location to where the monster was hit with a D10, and then you would roll a D6 for the damage, and you could roll them both together. You would then look up the damage area that you struck using the numbers on the left hand side of your equipment section, and apply any damage modifier that would apply. So if you'd hit them in location 1, the head for instance, you would add +3 damage to the damage die. If you rolled 10 for instance, you would have hit them in the feet and you would deduct 1 from the damage die. Then you would add any of your damage bonuses, and this figure here at the bottom where you've added all up the damage bonuses that you're getting for all the equipment that you've got equipped, and you would add that to the die roll as well. And then if the monster had a defense value, some of the monsters have a defense value, you would then deduct the defense from that actual total that you've just added up. And then once you've done your attack and fulfilled that, or your combat action, then the monster would then get to make an attack unless it decided to escape, in which case it doesn't get to attack. So we'll go through the process of escaping and blocking in a bit. But what you would do is you would then roll for the monster's attack, and you would roll D100 equal to or less than its attack value. And if you happen to do that, then the monster would roll, or you would roll for the monster, a hit location with the location die, the D10, and damage for it. And you would then apply any damage bonus that the monster may have, and that would then be applied to the area that was struck. For you, if the area was struck in a specific location that had armour, you would then from that damage total deduct any armour that was any positive values of armour that you had in the area. So in this case, for instance, if we were struck in the arms, this character's got an armour value of 3, you would deduct 3 from the damage total, and then any surplus damage you get to make a choice. If you've got armour equipped to the item, you could deflect some of the damage to the armour. Perhaps you're moving your arm in the way of the blow, and so the armour would take the brunt of the force, and so you could shade in up to 2 pips on the damage track, and that's optional. You don't have to do that. Any damage that hasn't been blocked by deflecting the damage would then be applied to your primary health points, and to your current health points, and you would deduct that from that section there. So next what we'll do is we'll just go, before we start combat, we'll just go into some of the other options that you've got in your instead of making an attack. So what you can do, instead of making an attack, you can attempt to cast a spell. You can change your equipped items around. You can use a belt item, an item that is equipped to your belt, or you can escape. And what we do is we'll go through these step by step. So the first 3 are called combat actions or attack actions, and you could attempt to cast a spell. Now you can only cast a spell if the spellcaster ability is unlocked. Until the spellcaster ability is unlocked, and you need to have an intelligence of 50 or more, you can't use any spells from the spell book. You can collect them, but you can't actually use them. And so, assuming that you've unlocked the spellcaster ability, you can choose any of these spells that are on this list within your intelligence range. So each of these lines has a level, an intelligence level, and if in the case of this, the first 5 has an intelligence level of 50 plus, and then it goes 60 plus, 70 plus, and so on up to 100. So any spells that are within your intelligence range, i.e. you have the required intelligence above the value that is shown on this level range, you would be able to cast those spells on those lines. And so what you would do is, instead of making an attack, you would choose one of the spells, and you would then make a spell test to see if it was successful. There's some of the spells are going to benefit you in combat. Some of them are meant to be used outside of combat, so you wouldn't really need to cast them. You shouldn't be casting spells if it's going to end up putting you down. You're going to end up taking enough hit points that you're actually going to kill yourself in casting the spell. So you shouldn't really be using those spells. There's a bonus that you should need to apply. So if the further up the spell book, the better the bonus is. So the first spell that you would add to the spell book gets a bonus of plus 20, and that's applied directly to the spell test characteristic. So you would test intelligence plus that bonus level, and that pretty much covers spell use. Then the next option is changed equipped items. So what you'll be able to do is, again, forfeiting an attack, take a combat action, and you would be able to remove 1 item from your equipped sections, which is your belt slot, and this area here, which is your equipped items, and you'll be able to unequip it and place it on the back of the adventure sheet in your backpack areas. Depending on if the item had a damage track, you would apply it to this area. If it didn't have a damage track, you would apply it to this area. And then once you've done that, you can then equip 1 item, and that item doesn't have to be the same type. So for instance, if you unequipped a weapon, for instance, you wouldn't need to re-equip a weapon. You could choose to re-equip a potion or a piece of armour, it wouldn't matter. And if you didn't want to unequip an item, you just wanted to add an item to your belt slot, you wouldn't need to unequip first and then to equip an item to your belt slot. You could just ignore the first part of unequipping an item and just go ahead and choose an item to equip straight to the adventure sheet, to the equipment area on the front of the adventure sheet. So in kind of like an easier way to think of it, basically what you can do is you can take one item from this side of the adventure sheet and apply it to this side of the adventure sheet, and then you can take one item from this side of the adventure sheet and apply it to this side of the adventure sheet. And the last thing that you can do, or the last combat action and attack action that you can do, is you can actually use a belt slot item. So at the moment, Sir James has only got one potion equipped to his belt slot. So what we could do is we could forfeit our attack, rub that out, and apply the effect would be +4 health points in that case. And then we would adjust it on our adventure sheet. Then the rules of escaping. There's two types of escape that could occur. There's you escaping combat or the monster escaping combat. So first of all, we're going to you, if your adventurer decides to escape combat. And what you would do is, instead of making your attack, you would instead try and flee combat. You would make this test here, escape combat. It says dexterity -10. If you're successful and you've managed to escape, what you would do is you would delete the monster from the dungeon combat track, and you would add the monster to the area that you was in the form of an encounter. So you would put down, in this case, let's say we escape these goblin archers in this area here, you would put down E38, which is the number it appears on the encounter table, and the note goblin archer at the bottom. And while you remain in this area, you can still search, you can still use doors and so forth, and you will not encounter that monster again. But if you was to leave the area, say we went back into this room, this area here, and then decided to head back into this, the first thing that you would do at the moment you've entered back into this area is you would re-encounter this monster again, and it would be back to full health. The time that's elapsed from you leaving an area and returning would give it enough time for it to lick its wounds and prepare itself and get back to full health. Then if the monster was to escape you, you get the choice of let it during your attack, at the time that you're meant to attack, you would get the choice of to either let the monster just escape, in which case you can just remove it from the combat track. You do not need to apply it to the area. If it escapes, it will escape you and avoid you for the rest of the quest. You can attempt to block its escape, and by doing that, what you would do is during your turn, when it's your turn to attack, you would instead decide to block its escape. You would make a strength -10 test, and if you was to be successful, you would force the monster to remain in combat, and you would have actually move on to step 4 of the combat phase, which is that you've struck it. It's assumed that you've done some damage to it, and you would roll in the normal way like you've just hit it for your damage die and your location die, and you would then deal any damage that was appropriate for that attack. If you fail, then the monster will have escaped you, and you remove it from the adventure sheet, and you won't encounter that monster again. You could attempt to just strike it and hopefully kill it and deliver one last blow, and what you would do then is you would make a normal attack roll in the usual way. If you didn't manage to defeat it in that round of combat, then it would have escaped, and you would again have to remove it from this adventure, from this dungeon track, and it would no longer be a part of the combat, and it would end combat. So that pretty much covers some of the options that you've got in combat. What we're going to do now is we're going to roll randomly for a monster and fight it to show you the mechanics of the combat in action. So here we go. So I've got 62. So I've rolled an orc archer. So what you would need to do is you take one of these dungeon combat sheets and you would write down the monster's details on the first available slot on this track, working from top to bottom. And so we've rolled orc archer, so we write orc archer, and we've got an attack value of 45, a defense of 2, a damage bonus of +1, and it has 9 hit points, and you would get to roll on table A +10 or W +10, and it only has the ability surprise. Okay, so once a monster has been defeated on this track, I'll just cover this quickly. Any reward that's shown in this column, when you've defeated the monster on that row where there's a reward that's offered, you automatically gain that reward and you would apply it to your adventure sheet. So when we actually get around to defeating this monster, and hopefully we will, we get to have +5 to a skill. And what you would do is you would choose one of your skills and you would just give it a bonus of +5. So the other sections are +1 to strength, +1 to dexterity, and they're primary bonuses. So gradually, as the more monsters that you defeat, the stronger you're becoming, and the more set up you are for more difficult and more harder quests. So right, so let's get into the combat. So what I've done is I've printed off the monster's ability sheet and a handy sheet which details combat rounds and turns and so forth. But this has got all the monsters' abilities that you'll face in the game. And so what we do is we look up first of all the monster's ability, see how that's going to affect us in combat. And we've rolled an Orc Archer with surprise, so we need to check out surprise. And it's just a case of seeing what the ability does and apply the effects to your actual combat. So in this case, it says the monster may surprise the adventurer when it first appears. Before the first round of combat begins, make a surprise test. So what you would do is you would roll intelligence -10 and apply any bonuses for your aware skill. So I've actually got an aware skill of +5. So I can apply +5 to my awareness to this surprise test. So intelligence -10, I've got an intelligence of 42, so it becomes 32, +5 for the aware is 37. So I'm rolling 37 or less, and of course I've rolled 80. So I'm completely and utterly surprised by the orcs. So it tells you on the test that a failed result monster gets a free attack. So outside of any combat round, the surprise will take effect, and what you do for a monster's attack is you roll equal to or less than its attack value. So it's got an attack value of 45 and it's rolled 98, so it's actually missed us, which was lucky. So perhaps the arrow whistled past our ear. So you don't need to go any further with that, and now you're ready to begin an actual combat round. And so what we do is the first step is to roll for the monster's reaction and see what it will do. So it's rolled a 3 and it says the monster will attack as normal, and then we decide what we're going to do. So we don't really want to escape just yet, so we don't want to change any of our equipment or anything, so we're just going to make a normal attack roll. And we're using the Mighty Claymore, which is a hand weapon, so we use our strength of 75 and we roll equal to or less than 75 if we're lucky, and we roll 22. So we've struck the monster. So we roll our location die and our d6 for damage die to see where we've hit it, and we've hit it in the legs for 4 points of damage. So now we go through the process of applying the damage modifier. So we deduct 1 from the 4 because we hit it in the legs, so that becomes 3. Then we add +4 for our weapon that we're using, so we've got 3, so that becomes 7. And then we look at the defense rating of the Orc Archer, and we've hit it for 7, and then we've got to deduct a further 2 from its attack because it's got a defense bonus of 2. So we've actually done 5 points of damage to it. So you deduct 5 from 9, that leaves 4 remaining, and now it's the monster's turn to attack. So we roll for the monster, and it's got an attack value of 45. We roll 45 or less, it's rolled 14, so it's hit us. And now we roll location, and it's damage die. So it does location 3, it hits us in the torso, and it gets +1 to its damage roll. So it's rolled 2, +1 is 3, and then its damage modifier is +1, so it does 4 points of damage to our torso area. And we've got some leather armour there, so you look across, and if it's got a positive armour value, you get to deduct the armour value that's there directly from the damage die, from the damage total. So we've actually got armour that's got no bonus to its armour value. So what we can do now is we can actually use our armour to deflect some of the damage. Perhaps we shove our shoulder or our body in the way of the blow, and so the armour takes the brunt of the actual damage. And so what we would do is you can do up to 2 points of damage. You can deflect to the armour, and you would shade in these pips here to take it to the armour instead of taking it as health points. So we've done our maximum, we've taken 2 points to the damage track, and that means we've got another 2 points left to take. So we're going to take that, we've got to take that as health point damage. So we've got a health points of 21, so we can deduct 2 from 21, so it leaves us with 19. And that is the first round of combat. So now we begin again, and we're going to roll for the monster's reaction. We get a 9, and it says monster damaged last round, it will escape. So it has been damaged, and so what it will do is it will attempt to escape. So our choice now is we can either let it escape, which we don't want to do, we can attack it and hopefully bring it down with our last blow, or we can attempt to block its escape and force it to remain in combat. Now if we was to take a swing at it and take that option of just make a normal attack roll, if we didn't kill it this round, it would escape. So we don't really want it to escape at this stage, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to block its escape route. And so what we do is we find the test here, and it says test minus 10 to strength, and it's got the escape skill. So we've actually got +5 to our escape skill. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 5 to our primary strength, or it would be our adjusted strength if we had an adjusted strength value. So we've got 75 +5 is 80, and then we need to -10. So we've got to roll 70 or less to see if we manage to block its escape, and we don't, so we fail. So the monster actually escapes now, and what you would need to do is you would need to remove the orc archers from the combat track. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to roll up. I'm going to choose a particular monster because I want to show you some of the other abilities that some of the monsters have got. So I want to go through the pack ability and just detail that. So we're going to do some goblin archers. So what we do is we write down goblin archers 25, 1, -1, 2, 3 and 3, and they've got a reward of AIW, and they have pack and surprise. Okay, so what we need to do first is check out what this extra ability does. We know what surprise does because we've already seen that. So what the pack ability does is the monster is made up of a few different monsters, a group of monsters. So the goblin archers, there's 3 actual individual monsters making up for one monster. So we fight them as one complete unit, but their health points are split up into 3 sections. And so what we would do is, if you was to look at the first figure and say that the 2 is the first goblin archer and he has an attack value of 25, the second one would add +5 to his attack value, and the third one would add +5 to his attack value. So he actually has an attack value of 25. And the reason why we do this is as the monsters get eliminated, they become weaker. All the while, the more monsters they are, the stronger they are, the better chance they've got of hitting us and attacking us. But as we manage to kill them off, they get less and less powerful. So what we do is we always ignore the first remaining monster. At the beginning of each combat round, we ignore the first monster that is in combat. He always has an attack value of 25, and any ones that are remaining will add +5 to the attack value for that combat round. So when we first encounter him, he's actually got an attack value of 35. So the first thing we need to do is do that surprise roll. So we need to roll intelligence -10 plus awareness, and we've got, so it was 37, we already worked that out. 42 -10, 32 plus 5 is 37, excuse me. And so we've rolled 35, so we've managed to spot the attack this time, and he hasn't surprised us. So now we move on to a normal combat round, and what we would do is we would roll for the monster's reaction. We've rolled a 6, so that's a normal attack, and we're just going to strike it. And we've rolled 92, so we've missed. And now it's the goblin archers that have got an attack value of 35, and they miss. And so now for the second round of combat, we then move on and we roll for the monster's reaction, and they've rolled a 3, so they will attack as normal. And now I'm going to just do a normal attack. I rolled 29 this time, so I've hit them. I've rolled location for 5 points of damage. I've hit them in the legs, so it's -1. So 5 minus 1 is 4, plus 4, that's 8 points of damage. And we look at the defense value of the monster, it's got 1, so that means we do 7 points of damage. And then what we do with a pack monster is we start applying the damage from the left to the right. So we've got 7 points of damage to assign. So the first archer is dead, that's 2, 3, that's 5 damage, and then we need to deduct 2 from this monster, the last remaining one, so he's got 1 health point left. And because combat happens simultaneously, the goblin archers do get their attack back at us at full strength. They began combat with a full line of goblins, so they end combat with a full line of goblins, regardless of how much damage we've inflicted. And again, if you happen to defeat the monsters outright, then they would also still get an attack back because combat is simultaneous. And so we're rolling 35 or less. They've rolled 88, so they've missed. And so now we begin a new combat round. And what we do is we roll for the reaction. We roll 4. Monster rolls its attack as normal, or the monster will attack as normal. And we're going to strike it again. So we're rolling 75 or less. We've rolled 56. And we've rolled a 6, which is good. I can explain how Mighty Blow works. So we've hit it in the offhand. We've rolled a 6, and so what we do is we've already unlocked the Mighty Blow ability. And what that, so I've rolled a 6. So what that allows you to do is every time you roll a 6 in combat, what you can do is you can re-roll the die and add the result again to your previous roll. And we've rolled another 6, so we get to roll that again, and we keep rolling until we don't roll another 6, and we keep adding up the totals that we've rolled. So far we've made 12, and so we add another 3 to 12, so we've rolled 15 damage for this attack, and it was in 7 the offhand, so we've got 15 damage. We deduct the defense value of 1, which means it brings it down to 14 damage. So we've completely annihilated the goblin archers, and they are on 0 health. but combat is simultaneous, so we still need to make that attack roll. They began combat round with just one goblin alive, so their attack value is just 25 for this attack. So we roll 33, so they miss, and so that so we've won the combat round. So we've defeated the goblins in combat, and so what we get to do now is we get to choose one of these items, one of these tables that we can roll on for our reward. So